Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar all about AI-driven testing modernization in 2025, building on what Devon has learned working with AI across the software development lifecycle in starting all the way back in 2023 and really kicking into high gear in 2024, as you'll see today. My name's Sean. I lead the AI offering globally as the Chief AI and Data Officer at Devon, based in London. I'm joined by Raghavendra and Arun. Why don't you introduce yourself, guys? Good to see you.
Hey, hi all. So this is Raghavendra. I'm working as senior architect here at Devon. So over to you, Arun.
Hi team, I'm Arun, working as a senior architect in Devon for the last 3 years.
So this is our brief introduction to start off with, Sean. So we'll introduce ourselves more as we pass through this particular
Cool.
webinar.
I think you need to close another Teams from your customer there. Or put yourself on Do Not Disturb. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. I'm just going to introduce and kind of put today's webinar in context. So if you go to the next slide. So if you need a reminder, right, why we test software, why quality is so important, you can look in any given year. We haven't had the massive global failure yet in 2025, but in 2024 and every year, right, we see the consequences of unresilient software, right? We see the consequences of testing and quality taking too much of a backseat, right, and not being part of the first-class design considerations of software, right? And this has real economic consequences, right? If you've ever worked on software, if you've ever had to fix things that broke, especially if they broke because of what other people did, it's really frustrating. But this has a direct economic cost and a real business cost, right? So there's a pretty interesting survey you can look up from New Relic a few years ago, saying more than half of organizations they value that outage time at 100,000 per hour, right? And for a third of them, it's actually way higher. And that's the cost of lost business as well as the cost of remediation, right? So when we think about why we want to avoid failure in our digital products, we don't just want to think about the cost of the engineering effort to fix it up. We need to think also about the lost revenue and the dissatisfied customers and the competitive threats that happen in the meantime. In July 2024, right? So you will remember that one innocuous update to a CrowdStrike client knocked out more than 8 million Windows PCs around the world, and it brought major airlines to their knees. And Delta Airlines, for example, had to cancel 5,000 flights over 5 days, and then they had no choice, according to their CEO, to take legal action, right, against those service providers, right? So avoiding these failures is important. Maybe the numbers aren't quite so big in your context, but remember, it's not just your time and the frustration that we need to account for. It's the business impact as well, right? So what we want to talk to you today on the next slide is about this concept of digital resilience. How can we avoid those things, right? What would it take to get ahead of those problems and avoid them and mitigate them as much as possible? Well, what if quality was finally a first-class citizen? If you go and look at the statistics, the ratio of people developing software to people testing software back in, say, the 1960s was kind of 1-to-1, right? And I don't think anyone works in a company where there's as much testing and QA resource as there is development resource. So how can we think differently about that challenge, right? And not just sort of complain about the lack of people that we have. How can we use AI in innovative ways to remedy that, right? And to get more value, more quality, more testing out of the same people that we have by using AI intelligently. That's, the guys are going to show you many, many examples of that today, and some very strong evidence of how AI doesn't just, give us incremental gains in the testing quality space, but kind of exponential gains as well. What if we could convince those developers to want more testing, right? Because they love it so much. And what if software was self-healing, right? Or at least self-medicating under human supervision. So the self-healing software thing has been talked about for a very long time. I think probably probably for decades. I don't know if we really want that, right? Do we want software to fix itself if it wasn't constructed perfectly well in the first place? Or can we have a much less crazy version of that, right? That we have self-medicating software. Can it take small actions, right? In the way that, if a doctor says, when this happens, you should take this much of this medicine, would we allow software to do that to itself? And that's a much lower, bar that it needs to cross. But just keep in the back of your mind another reason that we need to double down on all of this, right? AI itself is lowering the cost of taking shortcuts, right? AI is lowering the cost of all software development, but it's especially lowering the cost of developing bad software that takes all kinds of shortcuts, right? So we need to get ahead of this, not just for those business reasons I talked about, but it's also a very good idea to think about how AI can augment quality and testing today, because there could be a wave of testing that's needed, additional testing that's needed, and problems that are needed in coming very soon. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what we've learned in 2024 in particular about when AI makes a difference, right, in the software development lifecycle, right? So AI makes a big difference, or a bigger difference, the more clarity that you have. So the more you know your goals, what you're actually trying to achieve, and the more clearly you can define success metrics, it's easier to get AI to make a difference. And that's no different than anything in life or work, right? If we know what we're trying to do and we know what success looks like, well, in the context of AI, that means we can kind of describe these objectives more clearly and get better outputs. Next, in terms of scalability, it's important, right, that we actually have a need to accelerate the thing that we're trying to do, right? Just doing AI for the sake of it, or just doing AI to save us, spending a lot of time getting AI to save us 15 minutes a week doesn't really make a hell of a lot of sense, right? What does make a lot of sense is if there's a part of the software development lifecycle where we have a lot of demand for something, and I think quality and testing is exactly one of these, and AI can help that. Let's go and do that and invest some time working out how to do that. But let's not waste time automating things that that don't necessarily need automation. Okay, next one. Data, right? So when I met this team kind of a year ago, and they were asking, how can we help our client do something better with data, with AI? My first question is always, what data do you have, right? A lot of data has gone into the training process of these large language models that we all want to use, but it doesn't have your data. It doesn't know your software, or at least I hope not, right? So marshalling the right data assets is really, really important. Okay, and last but not least, judgment, right? AI makes the most difference when it's clear what the human is doing and what the machine is doing, and how accountability plays out in that, right? So if we have all the first three, but we're still, trying to take humans out of the loop, humans really need to be in the loop when it comes to quality and testing. It's the last backdrop or backstop, if you like, to make these quality outcomes we're talking about, to make digital resilience happen at a greater scale. Okay, and the good news is, right, testing and quality, and what we've found is that there's really no area of the software development lifecycle which meets those criteria better. Guys, do you want me to share the slides? Cool. So that's why we care about digital resilience and how it links to AI and quality and testing. Really, testing presents an ideal set of use cases, right? So today and the rest of today is all about seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 ways that we've achieved these kinds of things with the help of AI. We're in real customer work and not proofs of concept, like actual customer work at scale. So over to you guys to tell us more detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. We shall take it over from here. All right. So the flow I've quality has changed over the time period, right? So when we spoke about quality back in days, it was all about identifying the bugs, the manual tests, and probably we were understanding the application till production. But today, the quality is in its place where it's just beyond production, right? We have to ensure the endpoints are responding, the servers are responding. That means the quality is all about we can give the best experience for our customers and our use. And if we move the quality to the left, right, it starts right from the ideation phase. We should ensure we have the right idea which caters the right set of people. If our requirements are not right, it ensures we cost a lot of time in this particular competitive era. We also started our journey using the traditional frameworks. Probably it used UFT with VB or probably Java, C# with Selenium, right? And from that, today we have moved on to the new age or modern frameworks, which uses Cypress Playwright along with TypeScript or JavaScript. Thanks to this fast-moving AI, it has also given us an opportunity to blend its capability to our AI solutions. Currently, we have all our solutions or most of our solutions embedded with the modern frameworks and the capabilities of AI. I'm sure most of us have heard about this fantastic concept, which is in the market for almost a decade now. But it is also true, most of us struggled to have this particular pyramid achieved in our testing. It's not that we didn't have capabilities. It's all about the legacy applications that we were testing and the traditional frameworks we used, which used to slow us down with this particular implementation, right? We all had our testing predominantly at the UI phase. What you can see as the inverted pyramid instead of the actual pyramid, what you see at the right of the screen, right? So we wanted to achieve this, but what we were struggling all these years was more here. Most of our testing was dominant UI testing. Even if we found the bug, where we were finding it is at the UI stage, which is almost the fag end of our software cycle. We found the bug, but to fix the bug was a lot more costlier than if we have found the same bug probably at the early stage of our software cycle. Were we not equipped with shift left concepts? Definitely yes. Were we not aware of a continuous testing? Definitely yes. But then what stopped us to ensure or achieve this testing pyramid, or what is our fundamental core for our current modern testing, is what we would want to talk about as our limitations for our traditional frameworks, right? So what slowed us with respect to the traditional framework is the execution of the test by itself. We definitely had a lot of tests which covered our regression, which covered our smokes, which definitely covered our sanity. We were ready with all possible tests which could ensure the quality of the software that we wanted to deploy is ready, but the execution was under test. We found a solution of parallel execution. I'm sure most of you will definitely agree with me. To set up a parallel execution was itself a separate infrastructure and cost to bear. We, after bearing that particular cost, ensuring the infrastructure was all ready, what was the next challenge was the flakiness in the test, right? So now what is this, the new modern frameworks has enabled us with, is that these new modern frameworks provide us predictiveness, self-learning, and most importantly, they are scalable and reliable. To complement this testing pyramid, what was important was our shift left testing approach. We want to find the bugs not at the UI test level, but probably at the bottom of the pyramid where we see here, that is the unit testing. What do we exactly mean by unit testing? The fundamental crux of any of our applications are softwares or the units, the modules at the bottom of our application. If we can handle that foundation of this particular pyramid, we're a lot more sure that the quality is already at our disclose, right? So this is what the API capability or API empowered modern frameworks have provided us as a leverage, right? So today we can ensure every module or every unit at the bottom of our application is at its best capability. And then we move on to the mid layer, that is our API testing. Foundation is good. Now what we are checking are our endpoints. This is where the data interacts the most, right? So if we ensure our APIs are doing as expected, the unit testing is fantastic and they're integrated to our pipelines, then UI testing is just a simple regression, sanity, and smoke test, which will help us understand the flow of our application is giving the best experience for our customers who are using our application. So this is what we would want to present in front of you as part of our journey, as part of what we have done to ensure to achieve this modern way of testing or the new way of testing with the AI capabilities and modern framework. What is that we have done as part of our experience, right? So as we spoke, we had experience with our traditional frameworks. We definitely have experience with our modern frameworks, and we have now captured the experience with the AI empowered or AI solutions by themselves, right? So blending all of these things, we have come up with a roadmap which will help us achieve the true shift left, which for a decade was just a concept. We understand the fundamental for any of the testing is generation of the test cases itself, right? So we took a lot of time in writing our test cases. Now, with respect to this AI powered test case generation, it is definitely helping us to move a lot faster into that particular direction. Of course, I don't want to drill down too much into test case generation, which we all are definitely aware of what we generate, what we do, right? But it was not just about generating the test cases. As we generated or we thought about it, what we also understood was another ingredient of our testing, which was maintenance. We all wrote a lot of test cases, but what took most of our time is fixing those test cases, right? So if you have to fix those test cases that we have already written, it was not just a cost of maintenance, it was also impacting the judgment whether should we focus on the new features that we have to test to release it to the market, or should we focus on ensuring the existing features were working fine. So in our roadmap, what was important for us also to focus on autonomous debugging and self-healing. The two parameters look fantastic in our roadmap, but what was the real challenge? These two looked good for our new solutions or new softwares under test. But what about the existing solutions that we already have? What about the applications which we are already testing? And that's when we thought our roadmap is not about just focusing on the new testing, but it's also about ensuring the migration of our existing solutions to the modern frameworks, right? As we worked on it, of course, we didn't want to fall behind with respect to the power that workflow agentic AIs today offer us, right? Now, when you look at our roadmap, right, the first four topics would probably predominantly talk more of technical, right? So we're all good with the technical, but who are going to implement these technical? And what is important for these technical implementations are the people, process, and our best practices. So our last point where we thought that should be part of our roadmap is to ensure we as professionals upskills ourselves to ensure we can give best of the solution, best of the experience to our customers, scaling ourselves along with the empowerment of this technology and tools that we have, right? With this, we just want to drill down through the journey of this particular roadmap, and we would want to start with our AI-powered test case generation demonstration. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you, Raghav. So here we are talking about unit test case, the fundamental pillar in software testing. It plays a critical role in validating the quality of the application and identifying bugs in the early stage. However, many of our applications had 40% of test coverage. By leveraging AI, we can increase the test coverage between 80 to 90%. Now we are going to show a demo how we have achieved that percentage over here. So using the AI tool, we are this is actual software. We are reading the actual software and we are generating the test cases on its own. So by doing that, we are able to generate positive, negative, and all the exception scenarios in the unit level by making sure that all the bugs are figured out in the early stages of development. So by reading the code, the AI tool able to generate the test cases. Then we are going to bring that test cases to the specs file for validating the software. So by doing this, we are able to cover around 80% of code coverage for the software. Yeah. So this is what we achieve. Then when we're talking about API testing, this is the middle layer of software API. Plays a critical role as most of the requests from our applications are driven through API today. We believe if we ensure this layer is good as previous, it's all about just the UI and the flow of a quality. Now, how we achieve that API testing through AI, we are going to demonstrate now. So as we know, we have to test all the endpoints through manually. So now we are going to show a CRUD operation, how we are testing through manual. So we are having the endpoint, we are going to send a request to the server, and we are getting the feedback, and we are validating manually. The same operation has been performed for other various operations like put and delete. So what we are going to do is, using AI tool, we are going to generate from this endpoints automation test cases. So it's very simple. So you have to generate by clicking on the tool itself. So what it is happening over here? It is reading all the endpoints and it is reading all the response. And based on that, it is creating all the edge cases scenarios, validating the data of the response and the error scenarios over here. So these are the test cases got generated in a fraction of a second. If you want to do it manually, it will take like 2 hours or 3 hours to generate these kind of test cases. By this tool, we are able to generate the test cases within a minute. And apart from that, by seeing the test cases, again, we can enhance our test suite by validating the respective fields. In this case, we are validating the date. This should be expected as the expected value. So by putting over there, and it automatically generates the test case and which we can integrate in our test suite. So for each releases, we can run, we don't want to test it manually. So we can run the script automatically through CI/CD pipeline, which will read the results for you. So now we are going to show like how we can execute all the suites in one shot. So now we are running all the test cases, whatever we generated for our project, and we can able to see the execution results over here. By this, we are able to identify the errors in the API level itself.
Right. Thanks, Arun. So if you guys can see at the bottom, right, at the right bottom of the pyramid, what we see, right? So we started growing this particular pyramid, right? So here, if you can also observe, it's about the unit test integration, which is taken care, and then we have API testing, which is definitely taken care, right? So what we had to do manually for all these days to achieve this, along with the human intervention, with the power of these tools, we are able to achieve this at much lesser a time, right? So once we have all of these things that is ready, what is next important is definitely the crown of this particular testing pyramid. It is the UI test. Okay. So when we talk about the UI test, especially when we talk about shift left, it is important that we start the conversion of DOM to POM, right? So what are we going to do here, right? So whenever an application is started testing before the backend is connected to the front end, right? So the front end screens are already ready for us. So as a QA, when the front end screens are ready, which talks about all the devs, input, elements, buttons, all of these things are already written, then we can use the same page, what you can see at the right of the screen, which is already talking about all the web elements that we see in an HTML page. We just say, create a playwright POM for this particular page, right? And if you see just with that particular one command for this particular DOM, it will generate the POM file or the page object model for us, which we can use it across our application under the test, right? So this is just one of the pages that we have, and this is the step that we can do for all the pages that we use in the application, right? Of course, we have converted DOM to POM, and now we have to convert POM to test, right? So what does it mean, right? So we have the pages which have all the elements that we need for our testing. But do we already have the test cases that we need for the testing? Definitely not, right? So what we have is a set of elements that are part of our application. Now, using these elements, we have to integrate them to create actions that our end users would do across our applications, right? So what we are now telling is use a certain set of POM pages that we have in the application. Using both of them, we want to create a test case with a particular scenario that we would be showing to you in time, right? I want all of us to look at the bottom corner of the screen. So at this point of time, we are selecting the pages that we need for the test cases to be written. In this case, we are using a user form page and we are using a home page. If you see at the bottom, left bottom here, so what are we asking it is, as a recruiter, I want to create a job vacancy, right? So that I can post it in a potential candidates to apply. And what is that? We are also seeing what is the acceptance criteria that it has to meet to ensure these test cases or this particular feature, what I have under test, is called to be a done or called to be a success for me to have it in the release, right? So now if we look at this particular scenario and the acceptance criteria, what we have already provided, now this particular AI capability will help us generate the test cases based on this particular condition what we have already given, right? I'm sure for any of us with our experience to write this would have taken a lot more time what it is taking here to generate. That's it. It just reads the both of the POM files what we have, and it understands the scenario what we have given it, and it is able to cover all possible tests that we wanted or that would be part of that particular thing. I'm sure you will have a question. Is this the test enough? Is this all that we want to do? I'll definitely answer you that particular question in some time, right? One other part what we have seen when we talk about shift left testing, we are focusing on the automation for sure, and we are trying to write the automation test cases for sure. As long as the person who has written this automation test case, or probably the team which is operating is in, or somebody who's technical, can definitely understand what this particular automation test case is doing, right? Imagine there's a handover that has to be done, or probably we have people who are no more using that, or somebody who's not technical. How will they exactly understand what is written in that line of code? So what we also thought, it is important that we also have the manual tests documented based on the flow of automation what we have. Usually what happens, we usually wait for the manual test to be written and then we try to convert it to the automation, right? And what we are trying to do there is already wasting some amount of time from our side for waiting this manual test. So we thought, why don't we take a walkthrough? Why don't we get an understanding, right, of the application and start automating? And then we will do the reverse engineering of ensuring these automation tests are converted to the manual test. And this is what this particular part of the recording that you guys are seeing here, right? So we have a set of code which is already present here. So we are mixing here, if you see, with the legacy code, and also we are mixing it with the modern framework. So what we want to show you is whether it's a native browser language or if it is a non-browser native language, we can use these AI capabilities to ensure we have this results that we are trying to achieve. Now, if you see, there's a flow of test case onto the right of the screen, and what exactly this code is doing is described step by step here on the left, right? So anybody who wants to understand what this particular test case is doing can be easily understood here through our manual tests. What next? We have created the test case, right? And we have converted that probably to the manual test. And the next part is test suggestion. Why is this very important to us, right? The AI capability today, right? It just doesn't help us writing the test. It also suggests or understands, or it is so intelligent by itself to understand if we have a certain set of functions or tests that is present in our suite, it understands there can be a certain set of related functions or tests which should be part of the suite, right? So this will be very important feature for us to understand, because this, when we have a login, we all have to write a logout, right? Or we have any other scenarios that we have, we tend to write another set of test cases. But this intelligence will support us or help us understand, hey, you know what? You have a login. Why don't you think about the logout? Now, all I have to do is just suggested, I hit the enter button. I have all this set of line written, right? Let's say here we say 1 to 2 minutes to write these kind of tests. And if you have more suggestions like this, it can also help us if we're missing any of the tests to think. It also helps us to handle that particular part. And also at the same time, it also saves our time in writing more of test cases or thinking of more important scenarios rather than spending our time in writing all of these kind of test cases or test functions, right? I'm sure one of the other things that you guys would have, or all of us would have thought of, right? So we have a code, but we don't understand why a specific method is written, or probably why a specific parameter is written. And we always emphasize all of our codes to have comments, ensure why it is written. Sometimes when we have to release something in this competitive world as an early time to market or things, all these small things we feel is also hindering the time to market that we want to release our product to, right? So we also wanted to have this code comments as also part of our solutions, right? So we have a set of code. Now we don't want any of our automation engineers sit down and explain what this method is written for, or why have we used this particular variable, right? All of these things is automatically taken care by the intelligence or the power of the existing tools that we have, which will give us all of these things, right? So what did we speak about if you see, right? So we have definitely covered all the bases of our testing pyramid. We started with unit test case. We ensured the API tests are handled. And now we have also ensured every corner of the UI test is handled as well. I spoke about DOM to POM. I know most of you are thinking, what is DOM? What is POM, right? I'm sure I was a little technical there. Or I'm sure most of you probably there would have also understood. Let me take a step back and try to also explain so that we can relate to what we spoke about, the DOM or the POM, right? We all have seen this particular login page, or we would have seen a lot of pages like this, right? And we know behind all of these pages written, we have an HTML or an XML, which looks something like this, right? We have a text box, which would have an input ID saying username, or for the password text boxes. Now, these are the pages what we were referring to. For these pages to work, probably we will have to connect our backend, maybe to our database or probably to an endpoint for this to interact. But when we have these pages in our shift left testing, we can already start creating our pages, right? For a home page, we have a separate page. For a login page, we have a separate page. And why do we use this page object model? Because tomorrow, let's say, a particular page has to be removed from my application and a new page has to be integrated. And we all know it's a lot of maintenance for us if they're all integrated together as one page of a solution. So this page object model has helped us to actually segregate the pages based on the application, and anything that changes in that particular page makes it simple for us to maintain. So this is what we spoke about, converting DOM to a POM. Right? So once we have this front end ready, then we can definitely have these kind of pages generated. And once the application is completely ready, as you saw in a previous demo, from these POM objects, we are writing the respective test cases, which can be used to test our features or functionalities of our application, right? I'm sure now you are able to relate to the demo what we showed. And that's how the test suggestions or the comments that we saw in the previous demo will add a lot of value in our journey towards the shift left testing. Or it is also very important, especially when we are migrating our legacy frameworks to the newer frameworks, right? Or traditional frameworks to the newer frameworks. I'm sure.
Let's just take a pause there, guys. We have some great questions that have already come in. So based on what you've already seen AI do, can it achieve decision coverage or branch coverage as well as code coverage?
Exactly, Sean. Yes, we have achieved that one in unit testing because it is able to read that software and it is able to identify what are the positive scenarios which we can write automation test cases. By that, we can increase the test coverage of our software, which we have achieved.
Great. So as long as the different branches and possible decisions are discoverable in the code that generates the page or in a any artifact, right? We can also use it to do that. And I guess that's um, it's probably most code it gets covered with maybe a negative case first as a kind of well, what's the first thing we have to do? But something that you'll show us in more detail later is how you can kind of get all those other things for free. So we've got some interesting statistics on that. Thank you, IJ, for that question. Another question from RJ. How are the tests generated in PostBot? I think you showed it briefly. Is it based just on the source code or the request parameter or body in Postman? How is that working under the hood?
The AI tool has the intelligence to read the endpoints and the response and able to create the test case on its own.
Yeah.
It's not the software, actually through the endpoints.
Yeah, so the interesting thing when you start to use those kind of specialist tools like PostBot and Postman, obviously you would expect the company Postman to know a lot, right, about how APIs work in general, right? So that's what I mean by what I meant at the start about what unique data can we leverage into the process, right? A generic off-the-shelf LLM knows what an API is and it understands something about APIs, but it doesn't understand all the things that Postman has observed over 10 or 15 years, right, about how APIs are constructed, how they fail, how humans test them, right? So we take a base LLM, we add that domain-specific knowledge from a product like a Postman, which is a significant value add about the real world, right? Rather than the tutorials online that people have posted. And then the last piece of the puzzle is what you put in, right? The private things that you show it. Uh, so yeah, so and that the postbot stuff in Postman kind of does have that it just works kind of feel. The other thing there is that APIs a well-designed API should not look like a completely unique piece of software, right? Uh, you know, software can do very unique things, right? But when we expose that behavior through an API, there are a set of patterns and conventions, right, that are themselves also more predictable. So that's why, Postbot and Postman or any tool in the testing space, if that extra value from that extra data has gone in there, it can be significantly better than a base LLM. You can obviously get started with the base LLM, but those are great. Another question from Marku. Is it possible to have your UA testing done with any software as a service application? Can we cut those people out of the user acceptance testing completely?
See, user acceptance testing is nothing but we are ensuring the critical aspects of a particular application is working fine, right? So if we can handle the most of the other test cases, we can definitely also do this. We'll talk about this when we talk predominantly around the workflow agentic AIs. That is predominantly focused to look into how the today's workflow agentic AIs can also resolve the UATs or the critical flows that we want to do with the exploring. So we'll definitely take up that question once we have that part of the demo shown.
Right. There are some software platforms that do this, and I think what the guys have already hinted at and are about to show kind of shows that the part of user acceptance testing that was click the button and see if it works, and then we change it and click the other button, or that kind of maybe I don't want to say lower value, but the more repetitive, more obvious user acceptance testing absolutely can be automated, right? Now, will a user who has the power to stop your software going live, will they accept if you replace them with a bot? Maybe not, right? So, as with all testing, really all jobs where we want AI to help us do that job better, let's think about what we apply AI to. One more question before we move on, and we've got another Q&A at the end, but these just were really great questions, so I thought we'd get to them before. So Rowan asks, a concern of mine on having AI to generate and suggest test cases is it would lead us to certain comfort, right, or trusting it in a way that we might not notice AI is missing some scenarios, leading to some bugs leaking, right? So over the past year, how have you guys avoided the complacency, right, that AI could lead us into? I know you've got more to say about it later, but yeah, how have you personally avoided that?
No, it's a fantastic question. See, sometimes we feel AI is a two-edged sword as well, right? So we get into the comfort zone, we think AI is doing everything right, it is giving everything as a solution, right? So that's where, along with artificial intelligence, it's very important that we blend with human intelligence, right? So that's where we as QAs, our experiences come into play to ensure it is definitely generating the tests we need, but we are the decision makers, or we will have the judgment to say whether we have got the right set of test cases that we need, or are we giving it the right prompt, or probably we are asking the right questions, or we are giving the right information as part of our code to ensure it generates the right thing. So at this point of time, of course, AI cannot take its own decision. It definitely relies on our decision and judgment, right? So that is very true with respect to the AI.
Thanks everyone for those 4 great questions. Keep them coming because we have a whole extra Q&A session dedicated at the end. Back to you guys. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sean. And those were really wonderful questions for us, right? So, of course, just a little heads up or recap where we were talking about, right? So we were talking about how do we create these test cases, right? So in the journey, what we understood, it's not about just keep writing the test cases, right? So most of our effort in the past have gone in maintaining these test cases, right? So whenever we start maintaining these test cases, what is also true is it always puts us in a confusion whether should we focus on testing new features, which is very important for us from the perspective of the business, or should we focus on fixing these existing test scripts what we have so that we are assured of what we have in the business model or the application is working as expected, right? And that's where it is very important for us to ensure we have the integration of self-healing as part of our solution.
So the self-healing is whenever there is a change in the UI. There is for each releases. For example, if you are releasing for software 1.1 or software 1.2, if there is a change in the UI, automatically you have to maintain your automation script. Because there is a change in the UI, we have to simultaneously fix our automation scripts to execute in the pipelines. So here, with self-healing mechanism, whatever changes that's happened on the UI, the script's automatically able to identify the changes and adapt for those things and fix on its own and execute it. So by doing this, the maintenance cost of the script, it has been tremendously reduced. So that is the power of self-healing using AI. So now we are going to show a demo. Here, we are having two elements, which you can use for your login purpose. So this is, you can think it as like a software release 1.1. So the test case got passed. In the next release, if due to some UI changes, the front end of the UI got changed. That's what we are going to show a demo to here. So basically, we are changing some UI elements for some requirements. So then once the UI is changed, then obviously we have to maintain the automation script. Then that is again, the cost is involved to maintain the script. It is a continuous activity. But with self-healing using AI, automatically the test scripts will fix for the latest changes and the test case will still pass. We are showing the changes so that the old changes been revoked by the new changes. So if you run the test case, it should fail, right? But the self-healing mechanism will take care of that, and it will fix on its own, and the test case will work as expected. So it able to place that one, and it able to log in. So this is called self-healing. So wherever we have like consecutive UI changes, so these solutions, it's worked for us. It able to the maintenance of the scripts, it able to resolve its own. Now imagine it should not give false positive results to us. In this case, we are removing the entire control. In this case, whether it will work or not, definitely in this case, it will fail because It's able to identify the element itself not there. In this case, it should fail. So by avoiding the false positive over here. So this is the very good mechanism where we don't need to maintain the scripts. Once it's developed, it will run, it will heal on its own. So this is the advantage using self-healing mechanism in QA in AI space. Now we are going to put back the control. We are not maintaining the script. We are just executing the script again. Automatically, the script identifies the element is there in the UI and it fixes on its own and it is executing. And now the same test case, it got passed. Now, if you see the whole cycle, we only changed the software, but we didn't change anything on the test scripts. So automatically it heals on its own and it makes sure it is working.
Right. So what we want to also say is AI doing everything automatically? Is it a magic wand? It can just do everything. So the answer is definitely no, right? So it definitely needs a human intervention to understand if the power of AI is used as per what we need. Is it going according to our mission or what is that we have planned, right? Because AI is a larger forum, a larger spectrum, right? So it can give, and also if we look at that, right? So it's important that we have optimized way of asking AI, right? The AI platform is not, how do I put it? Like it's token around that, right? So we have to have the optimized solution to get this particular results what we are looking here, right? So we definitely saw the test case generation. We definitely saw about the debugging. Of course, as we said, this is predominantly when we have a new solution, integrating all of these things is very, very easy. And because the solution is started from the scratch and it's fantastic. But the next thing that we had in our mind, as I spoke in the past, right? What do we do with respect to our existing solutions? How do we migrate, right? So if you have to have someone who's senior, someone who's media, based on their experience, they'll take their experience to migrate the respective test cases, right? Can we use the AI power to also in our migration? So that is what we would want to see as part of our next demo.
Yeah. So as we've seen here, like most of the applications now has been migrated to latest framework using React or Angular or native platforms. So once the front end or the software got migrated to the new technologies, but still we are maintaining our automation script with traditional framework. So what it is happening between these? We are not able to get the expected results. There is lack of the execution rate is very slow. And we are facing a lot of challenges. We are not able to get the consistent result over here. So recently we have migrated the traditional framework to modern framework where we use AI in the migration process. So if you see here, we are using AI to convert the traditional framework to a modern framework. For this instance, the traditional framework has been built using C# with Selenium. And what we did is we are able to migrate the entire form like page object model to TypeScript with Playwright, which is very much aligned to modern tools, which is aligned with React or Angular. So within a minute, we are able to convert the entire form classes to modern TypeScript languages using Playwright. So it is so faster. Within a minute, we are able to convert it. Similar way, the entire automation suite we converted from traditional to modern framework. That's what we're going to show a demo here. So now on the right-hand side, you're able to see a traditional code, which is very like laggy. We are able to get constant flaky test case output. So what we planned is, okay, we will use modern technologies like Playwright and TypeScript, and using AI tool, we are able to convert, we are able to migrate all the existing traditional code to a modern framework things. So it's converted within a second, then we are creating the file over there. By this, we are able to convert the entire migration 6x faster, which means within a week, we are able to completely migrate the entire framework. Then what is the end result? We are able to get the execution results faster with 2x performance. Before it took like 6 hours of execution. After migration, within 2 hours, we are able to get the result. That's where, see, we have lot of test cases we are having, right? like we definitely have lot of tests to test. Then what is the point if it takes more time? Parallel run. I hope we all suffered in the previous traditional things where we need, if you want to run your test case parallelly, we need to bring a very big infrastructure. And also, we have lot of issues when we are running our tests through parallelly. We face concurrent issue, tooling limitation, state dependencies. On top, we are not able to get the consistent result when we run on parallelly. With modern tools, easily we are able to run our test case parallelly without any infrastructure. So that's what we are going to show here. So this is the execution where it is happening in a sequential way by just one configuration. Now we are going to run a parallel execution. We are going to run a suit in a sequential way by only changing the configuration to false. Now you can see the entire suit, it is running in a sequential way. So one test is completed, next test it will start. Next test it will start. Like that, it is a sequential activity. By doing this, we all have a very big suit. So it is taking more time to complete the execution. With modern framework, it's very simple to run our suit in parallel mode.
As we see, right? So before we talk about parallel, we also wanted to show the time it takes when we run in the sequential. So we don't want to go more deeper to say how much infrastructure or architecture, server node, server client architecture that we had to use for these parallel executions with our traditional frameworks, right? If you see at the right top corner, the total time it has taken is something that you guys can note. It is 32.7 seconds when we do it sequentially, right? So we are now all we are doing is changing that particular parallel configuration to true. And today parallel execution is just one config away, right? And we are changing the number of workers, right? We just don't want it to run with one worker. Probably we can change the number of workers that we need and we just do the same execution to run. And it took for us to make this parallel probably just 3-4 seconds. It was just changing of the config, right?
Exactly.
So this is how the modern tools and frameworks are really leveraging. So we might think, right? So we already have Selenium scripts, we already have some other scripts. If we are only using AI powered things, why don't we use it with the same existing frameworks, right? So we can definitely do that. It's not like we cannot do that. But what we would miss is these configurations or these kind of capabilities that our modern frameworks are giving us and asking us to use it as a leverage, right? Now, if you see the 70.7 seconds, right, which is almost 50% of what would our traditional framework would have really taken. And for us to do this, it didn't even take much time what we would have done with our traditional frameworks. So this is what is very important when we speak about the migrations, right?
Yeah, we already.
So we spoke about the journey throughout. Probably most of our demos or the videos that we showed was predominantly about, okay, how do we do test case generation? How do we have a self-healing? How do we have the intelligence to suggest test cases or write code comments? It looks fantastic, right? Probably most of us have this capability, would have used. We think it's just a tool thing, right? But what is more important, there's another aspect of our testing. Sometimes we want to do exploratory testing, a quick sanity, a quick smoke, but we still have to do the same set of test case generations, right? We have to maintain those test cases also as part of our suite. And that will take more time for us if you want to release to ensure this is done, right? Thanks to the current workflow agentic AIs, all we have to do is just say a quick check on some scenarios that we think is business critical. So this is the point. We just had a question from one of our audience, right? So how do we handle UAT? Or if we have something, a quick check that we want to do with respect to the application, how does it work? Probably this is the phase that we want to really answer those questions. Or probably this is the phase we would want to show how the current workflow agentic AIs have also resolved that concerns that we have, right? So if we look at this particular video or the demo, I will just pause this video at one point, right? If all of us can look at line number 5, right? So what we're asking is go to a specific URL, right? We want this particular application to ensure a product is added to a cart and that particular product is checked out. Simple as that, right? I'm sure most of you would agree with me. If I had to do the same set of activity, the number of lines of code would depend based on the experience what we have, right? Yes. If I had a senior probably to do the same thing would have taken probably half day to a 1 day. If you had someone media as a QA, probably this would have taken 1.5 days. Someone junior catching up on things to do this whole end-to-end of this particular flow would have taken good 2 to 3 days for the same script to be written. Yes. right? It was definitely achievable. It's not like it's not achievable. That is what we have seen throughout at the back end of this particular demo what we showed. But the power of agentic workflow agentic AIs today, all I have to do is write this 12 lines of codes and ensure these 2 lines are written, and that's it. That's it. And it will take care of understanding, finding the elements which are part of my particular application. Just 1 minute. Right? So if you see this, it can launch the browser for us.
Yes.
It can go into that particular application. And we have not even told it what are the identifiers of the elements, right? We have not told how to find a text box, a button, right? Or what are those data that we have to feed into this particular application, all right? So it is able to perform all of those things. If you see, it is numbering itself onto every element, and it is trying to tell this is what I'm trying to do. And it also gives me step by step, right? If you see what have I clicked, it says I've already clicked this particular element. I'm into this particular product screen. I've gone to my add to cart, right? If you see, it has also added already a product by itself. And all these fields, it's able to fill the data, the legitimate data that it has to go into this, right?
This is a perfect example for UAT testing. Like you can perform it, you can instruct the agent to perform set of actions, which automatically identify everything and it performs on its own. We don't need to write any code for that one.
Exactly. But when we talk about this, Arun, I'm sure most of them in the audience would have had, oh, I'm not giving any test data. What happens to my security? What happens to that, right? So see what we are doing here is probably because we wanted to show it for the demo. We have just given it as like a valid credentials. Of course, that application has everything in the public, right? But as we have implemented in our projects, right? So we use our own tenants where we ensure the security is handled, and these credentials and whatever we're using as part of this particular agentic AIs, they're all encrypted, right? So this is how we ensure the security of it is maintained, because most of us, when we started, of course, we also had the same concern what is about the security, right?
Exactly.
All right. So we definitely spoke about a lot of good things that has happened, right? So what has that we have achieved till now, or what is that we are capable of, right? And we also experienced some challenges in this particular journey. The first challenge that we had was lack of awareness, right? So we as employees, or also from the organization leadership point of view, since when we talk AI, right, it's a vast topic, right? It can start really at the start of the ideation till the deployment phase and even after. So it was very important for us to make ourselves aware of this particular AI and its capabilities. And the second challenge what we had was organizational change, right? What does it mean? How does this new implementation of AI impact our people, impact the processes that we have, and what will happen to the existing technology that we have in our organization, right? And then AI's future impact. Of course, what was the best solution yesterday in AI is already obsolete for today. If this is how uncertain it is, how are we going to rely on our solutions based on these particular tools that we would have to do as a solution, right? To address all of these challenges, we have our own framework, which is aligned towards the vision and the strategy, right? So what did we do as phase 1 of our framework? As we saw, the first challenge was to gain awareness, right? So as part of the phase 1, we decided let's first have the awareness and let's be ready to implement that as part of our testing, right? So what did we focus on? We ensured we had the right focused real world test scenarios as our AI training, and we ensured we marked down or listed down the key bottlenecks that could cause the slowness in our testing or slowing us down towards the time to market, right? Did we not have barriers? We definitely had barriers, right? So in the phase 1, the major barrier what we had was skepticism from the teams. And what is that we thought we could solve this barrier through was having small, quick wins, right? If we could make a flaky test no more flaky was already a quick win for us, right? If we could use AI in a log analysis and we could understand where our software is failing or where is that we can better our test strategy was already a quick win for us. So that was our phase 1. And our phase 2, once we had our awareness, the next phase for us was to define our AI strategy towards the testing or the quality, right? And here our focus points was to ensure what is that which can give us a high value as a use case by itself. And we engaged our key test teams, right? And we prioritize predominantly on predictive defect analysis, self-healing automation, and of course, test case generation, which was the fundamental for us to start our test case journey through AI or AI-powered frameworks, right? And we also conducted a lot of POCs in the real test environments, right? Sometimes it is true when we look into a tutorial, into a video, when everything is running, right? It looks pretty simple. But when we try in reality is when we understand it is not as simple as just an execution that is working fine in a tutorial or a video that we see, right? So that is the phase we try to understand more about it, right? So what was our barrier? What is that can give us a tangible ROI for the testing teams that we are implementing these AI solutions, right? So we again narrowed down the use cases. Instead of using AI everywhere, so we started focusing on those areas where we can add value, not just to us, but also tomorrow to the customers where we are going to use this particular solution. And the phase 3, right? Of course, we have awareness. We have done certain POCs and prototypes. Now it was time for us to implement in our real-time projects, right? So that was our phase 3. So we did implementation, and our focus point was ensuring it is not just the AI, right? By this phase, we had understood, as we spoke throughout, tools can help us, or if I have to speak very simple, we definitely have a car, right? Probably a car driven by one person can go at a speed of 160, or maybe for someone it might just go at a speed of 80, right? So the car is the same. Here the tools are same. It depends on the human mind, which is leveraging that particular tool into the mission what we have or the vision what we have. That was our phase 3, right? So what was the barrier there? The tests we definitely generated, but we were not sure whether they can be reliable, right? Or does it really understand the domain in which we are trying to test the application? So that is the solution we identified in this phase. So it is not that we blindly use any tool or we just blindly say, like one of our audience was asking, right? How reliable can it do? Can it just write all the test cases? It can write test cases, but is that the right test case that we need is what the QA expertise or our journey of this tenure that we have used and gathered comes into play. And that is what came well for us in the phase 3. And what is phase 4? Of course, we had set of people and set of expertise from our side where we had this expertise. But now it was time to scale it across our organization in the testing phase. And what was our focusing point as our phase 4? We wanted to share this experience across all the teams that we have. We wanted to set up a center of excellence to share this knowledge, what we found over this journey across our organizations. And what was more important for us is to standardize our testing strategies and best practices, which also included the security part of it. We did enough trainings. We ensured people what are the things to use and what not to use, right? It's very easy if you just browse in the internet today and I say, I want to do this, suggest me some set of AI tools, right? And most of them, our eye will pop up if it says it's free, correct? All we're doing, we're just putting a use case, we're hitting an execute button, but we really don't know behind the scenes what is it doing with the data that we have provided. And the experience what we have got today, we can say what is the right tool to use, what is the right setup that we have to do to ensure and empower AI along with the security of our applications and ensure the quality is not compromised at the cost of security, right? So that was the barrier. The scaling we thought would be expensive and slow. Of course it is, right? So the solution what we had, we ensured we focused using these AIs predominantly for critical test suits, right? And then maintain the rest of the things with the normal test cases what we were handling it with, right? So this is our phase 4 or the 4-phase AI adoption framework that we have here at Devon, right?
Exactly.
So good. We spoke about what we have done. We told about our challenges. We definitely shared our framework. But what is it if we have not seen our outcomes, right? Or we have not seen any results out of it? We also want to share with you guys our outcomes and from all of these experiments. And this is across the projects that we've been using here at Devon, right? So what is that first we saw, right? We saw a 30 to 50% reduction in our execution time, a good 70% increase in our scenarios tested. We could save 40 to 60% in our test maintenance. The time to market was almost 40%. higher than what we saw in the past. The flaky tests, where we spend most of our time, we have reduced it by 80%, and the manual test cost has come down by 50%. The defect identification with the intelligence has now increased 30 to 40%. And finally, the feedback cycles, which is very important for us when we talk about releasing products sooner in this competitive world, has now increased by 30%. And we definitely want to show a graph here, which talks about the total number of tests that we have automated through AI till date, and also the scenarios that we have generated through the AI, right? So if you can see by quarter and quarter, this is the amount of things that we have increased. If you see the green layer is still the number of tests that we still maintain in our suits, but the blue ones are the ones which you see as increasing, which can be part of our sanity, smoke, exploratory testing, or it can also be part of our UAT testing. So this is the journey that we have had with respect to this AI empowered migrations, and also for us to talk about the new test cases or the new way of testing that we have done throughout in our journey, right? What were our three takeaways, right? So I'm sure we have been speaking a lot of things and we have been telling a lot of things, right? But if you have to summarize all of these things as part of our experience, as part of our journey, what are our three takeaways from this, right? We now believe, right? AI is not a magic wand, but a mission wand. What does that mean? Probably AI can do anything and everything. Sometimes it can also confuse us really hard, right? It can put us to a question, is this really what we wanted? Or it will confuse us to say where to stop, right? So that is where it is very important for us to understand what is that I'm wanting to achieve? What is that I want to test, right? And if we have that mission clear, AI will empower us to ensure that mission is definitely fulfilled, all right? And the second point, what we understood, if the teams don't have agile DevOps foundation, what do we mean by that, right? So we should ensure the team has that agility, the pipelines are in phase, right? And they understand what is that end-to-end quality, what is a software as a whole. If this is not understood by the team, then they strongly rely on anything and everything that AI is just putting in front of us, right? So right questions to be asked to AI, or everything depends on if that particular team or the foundation of the organization is agile DevOps, right? And the third part is AI is a rapid prototyping. Okay, it's not a ready-made solution. What do I mean by that? I'm using a solution today, it will be lasting forever, right? Maybe today I use some tool, by tomorrow the tool is obsolete, right? So what we have understood over the journey, the AI journey is not about just tools. It's the mindset of the people who are using these tools. Their experience, their skill makes a lot more difference on just using any AI tool that comes into the market, right? We can always say this tool does this fantastic. It can write the best of the test cases. It can do the best of the self-healing. But is it doing exactly what I want, right? Or what we want? Is the learning that we have taken throughout. And that's where, if you see, even in our framework or your roadmap, we have always empowered our people to blend with the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence. So this is what we would want to say as our takeaways from this particular journey that we have had with migration of test cases from traditional frameworks to the new frameworks, and also the new test cases that we have already started using the modern frameworks. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, guys. Great set of takeaways there. And if you look at those takeaways, one way that I summarize those in answer to kind of many of the questions people have put today is this makes the biggest impact when you already have the right framework, the right mindset for testing to begin with, right? So if you are looking to AI in testing or anything else as a get out of jail free card, or to take shortcuts, or to, you know, not extend your capability, you're kind of thinking about it the wrong way. You need to think about it as a capability enhancer, right? And the capabilities that it enhances are better if that foundation is in place. So expecting AI to help you jump from testing like 30 years ago all the way to shift left in a single day with a single tool, not going to happen, right? But wherever you are on your testing and quality modernization journey, what you saw what you've just seen over the past hour were 5, 6, 7, 8 ideas for how you can make a what feels like a small impact in one moment, but then when you see how all of those numbers kind of add up, that becomes a really big and kind of profound change. We have some great questions, more coming in. First one from Katalin. How early in the cycle do you ensure software and test scripting is built or designed to meet specific business requirements? So I guess, how early were you able to get there before all of this a year ago? And how much earlier are you getting there now?
Sean, could you please repeat that question so that I don't give the wrong answer?
So how early in the cycle, in the software development cycle, are you, building and designing that testing approach?
As early as ideation, simple as that, right?
Right.
Because we have to ensure the idea that we have itself is right, especially in this competitive world, right? With the infrastructure of the software being so less of cost, what I've started as an idea today can already be started as an idea by someone the next day, right? Now it becomes into competition, whether who has the best of that, right? And today we talk about the customer experience. Even if a single button is not working as expected by the end customer, can get the customer out of a business, right? So that means ensuring the ideation is right, the requirements are gathered right, the analysis is done right. So for us, the quality starts right from the day we decide that we want to do something as a software.
Fantastic. Which is, again, that's just what modern testing is. AI gives us some ways to, start generating those artifacts sooner, right? So that even as the software is being developed, a lot of the testing is already defined. Cool. Some more questions. Actually, in that same vein, how do you, measure that coverage, be it code coverage, decision coverage? How do you know how much you have tested and how well you have tested it? And has anything changed over the past year?
We have used AI tool for this one, Sean. Sonar Cloud AI, which it will do the analysis of the code, compare with the test case, and it will throw you a report where most of if it is not covered with the test cases or there is no coverage, it will show you in the report. By that, we know it. This is from the code point of view. Again, we are mapping our test cases with the requirement. So if you take whatever requirements we are having in the development phase, how much we have tagged or connected with our test cases. By that also we know how much of test coverage we did for the requirement. So traceability matrix is the best example for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So traceability is key, but also you mentioned Sonar,
Yes.
Many people will already have products in place that are creating that data, right? Creating the data that can then now be used in maybe a different way to increase coverage or increase how well you measure that coverage, right? So as you start your journey using AI to modernize how you do the testing, some of that you're going to have to learn how to do yourself and adopt the mindset and experiment. But as you do that, it also makes sense to look at the products that you already use, right, to do key parts of this workflow. And if you are, using AI well in testing overall, you will also be better at getting more out of those AI features and also get better at getting more out of the non-AI features, right? So Sonar, that whole suite of products and things like it existed long before large language models came along. And they can both generate very useful data for us to feed into processes, but in answer to this question, they can also help us measure things, right? And sometimes the measurement doesn't really change. We already know what we should be measuring and well. And in testing, often that's quite easy to define compared to other things in a business. Question, I think you touched on it, Raga, before, but what do you need to do when you're thinking about using a product that might be sharing data with an external service? What's on your mind before you click that button to use the product, especially a free product? If someone steals our tests, it's almost as bad or maybe worse than stealing the source code, if I put it that way.
Definitely yes, definitely yes. So it's very important for us to understand the tool, read into the terms and conditions, right? Try to understand what is the architecture behind that particular tool that is using to write this, right? We might think it's just a click of a button, but we don't know what is an injection behind that particular button, which can
Yeah.
easily compromise,
Yeah.
right? Whatever is the set of data that we have or the test cases, right? So that is what would come to our mind. So we don't, to be very honest, that is what we were talking as part of our initial training also, right? So that is part of our framework as well. So we
Yeah.
are here trying to ensure what is that we have to do of AI and what is that we don't do of AI. And one of this is the security that is always on top of our mind, sure.
Yeah. And I think key point there is, you actually have to look at the terms and conditions, right? Maybe this tool will be very clear that it's going to do things with data that you don't want. If those terms and conditions are difficult to understand, you could very safely paste those terms and conditions into any free large language model product and voice your concerns and have a large language model try to find evidence, right, in the terms and conditions for what are the policies. But the most important thing would be that architecture, right? What can we learn about that product? Is it purely a wrapper on someone else's thing? What are they doing? Where does the data go? And we just need to be extra careful in the way that we would be careful with any other tool, but we just now have this extra need to be careful of, the afterlife of the data that we might send. Great question from Stacy about, the context you guys are working in. There's kind of an existing code base, right? And so when we go back to when AI makes a big difference, uh, the more data we have, right, from an existing code base, clearly the more we can expect from AI. A lot of the things you showed are using AI to almost automatically uh, uh, do some things that would take just a very long time, but are very, very nice to have done at scale. So you gave some examples of how long it would take people of different seniority to generate some of those scenarios that it now takes, 30 seconds. Stacey's question is, when you do that on new code, in new features, in new products, don't you risk, you know, unseen technical functional bugs being baked into the tests because you have much less context on how they work? So how would you approach that, right? If you were given by our customer kind of a much newer product today, how would you avoid, you know, uh, problematic code generating problematic tests?
No, that's a very good question, right? So that's where we said there's not a strong dependency on AI, right? We still have methodologies like TDD and BDD, which comes into play, right? So we still have the test cases that we write, and we ensure that particular feature, right, is always failing first. And with respect to the development of the new features or things, we ensure those particular test cases are passed, which will ensure the features that we have is at the quality that we're looking for. So this is as simple as that, right? We stick back to our foundations and fundamentals of testing, and we blend that with the capabilities of AI. And we're not strongly relying just on AI, and that's where our expectation.
Yeah, I think a lot of the work you did last year with that customer, a lot of things had been developed and the testing needed a big
Yes.
upgrade. Your answer just then links back to what I said at the very start about, especially in a brand new code, brand new feature, maybe brand new product context, we need to push all the way left into making developers want to work the way that we know that they should, right? Again, test-driven development is not new. It's very, very old. All of these best practices about building quality in early, we've known about them for 10 or 20 plus years. The interesting thing now is how can AI push those things earlier and further left. And so in the context of this, it's even more important that quality professionals, or at least the quality mindset, is being imparted or imprinted on developers from those early stages. Because Stacey's right, the problem context is lower when there's less data to feed in to any of these tools. So that requires a human, right, to think beyond, right? To look at where the ball is kind of going, and to even defensively ask difficult questions and write tests um, for things that haven't happened yet in the code, right? So again, this is the role of humans and experienced humans. Now, whether those experienced humans handwrite those things or prompt AI tools to do those things is less important than the human is thinking about where would this product go? Where could this product go? What would the problems be down the road with this, right? Because yeah, when you've just started working on a brand new product, brand new code, there is that potential, especially if more of that code starts to be AI generated and it repeats mistakes. That's something we want to avoid. A couple more great questions. Have you connected these tools to kind of defect management to kind of close that loop so that when a problem is reported by a user, to a help desk, that kind of thing, can we close that loop and make more of that data about how the software is actually used in the real world to more proactively develop it and improve its quality in the software development lifecycle?
We have taken a precaution, at least. Like, I would not say an exact yes as a solution there, but we also have a strong integration of neural, like a Grafana kind of tools, where we continuously monitor with respect to the logs, the endpoint responses. So our approach here is not to wait for the end customer to tell us where we have the bug, right? Rather, we have a quality practice where we are proactive enough to find the bugs before the customer finds it, right? So that is more the direction that we have taken here, Sean. So we take care of all these monitoring tools, the APMs, which will already catch hold of a lot of things that might have already, in case it has slipped out into the production from our side.
Yes, and I think if you that graph that you showed demonstrated that if you can scale up the creation of those automated tests, then these AI tools, different kinds of AI tools, can generate additional testing scenarios on top, not exactly free of charge, right? But using the work you've already done, they can go much further. And so you showed how with a single prompt in one of those tools, it can pretend to be a user, right? The same kind of tools, we could also prompt them to be a user trying to, hack our software, or a user who hasn't learned how to use it, right? And if we can run those things in parallel, right, compared to when, I was asked as a user to kind of start breaking and testing software 20 years ago, and you just think of crazy things that you could do. Click on this button. I know I'm supposed to click this, then this. What if I do it in the wrong order? These behavioral models and behavioral tendencies, I think, is an interesting next step. And as we try to make more of this kind of agent-based, right, we can go beyond sort of monitoring. Is it up? Is it down? Is it accepting logins? And actually have users adopting different levels of knowledge of the product, right? Start clicking around and giving us much richer information about how our software really works in the real world. Okay, I think we've got time for just one more question. Great benefits. What will using AI mean for my wallet? Will the gains be offset by larger expenses? Right? So if our customer asked you, okay, great guys, you've reached, I don't know, 400 automated tests with the help of AI, and because of that, you've also generated another 500 AI generated scenarios on top. But did this cost me €1 million? How would you answer? What does it cost our customer in terms of AI tools relative to the value that they've gained?
I would not say there is one silver bullet answer to this, right? It depends on the strategy that we put around the solution we have. It depends on the product that we have, the application under test, right? And where are we using this AI, and where is it really required for us to use AI, right? So as we rightly said, right, we can use AI if it at this point of time for all our critical tests, and probably for us to leverage where we were spending most of our time manually and wasting our time to reduce or slow down our time to market, right? So that's how we look at it as a QA. But I would rather probably pass on that question to our CTO of
Yes,
our,
yeah.
our
But I
chief.
think, from my knowledge of the tools you've been using, these tools are costing in the, the tens of euros, maybe the hundreds of euros per month or per year, right? This is nothing that you showed. Almost everything that you showed can be tried out in some kind of free version with all of the provisos we were talking about what code, what tests you want to do with it. But you can prove to yourself that AI can do some of these things very cheaply. Obviously, the customer you're working for has then invested in some particular tools, but these are not expensive tools relative to the value that you gain, right? If it means stuff that would take days or weeks or would never get done, gets done in 30 seconds, right? This is why testing is a great place to start applying AI in the software development lifecycle. Of course, everyone would like their software to be developed faster and cheaper, but a more easy to evaluate and quantify real world problem is, uptime and reliability and customer satisfaction at the end of the day. So AI is a great AI in testing and quality. It has the nice feature of it can help good people do more faster, but it also gives us new capabilities. It's not just an efficiency play. It's hey, now we can get creative in some of the ways that you saw today. If you just move on to the last slide there with some contact details. So if you'd like to dive in any more, thanks for the previous 10 great questions. I had some questions prepared that we didn't need because the questions from the audience were like right on the money. So thanks to everyone who put something on LinkedIn or here on Zoom. We'd love to tell you more. We'd love to dive more deeply into the specifics, right? Give you more detail on those metrics and what those metrics that we've achieved for this customer, how that might map to your context. So just reach out to our colleague Mayank on that email address. You can also find case studies, recordings of other webinars, and this webinar as well will go on our website, devon.nl. So that just leaves me to thank you, Raghavendra, Arun, for a really awesome and in-depth and energetic tour through all the ways you've been using AI, right, to modernize testing, right? I really like how you think about it and the progress you've made over a year. How can AI do this or that? Well, that's kind of the wrong question, given that we need to do all of these things that you gave a really great outline of and kept track of all the way through. Given what we need to achieve in quality and testing, where do we apply AI to the right parts of the process to make that faster, right? And some of the stuff that you're now getting to and peaking at is really impressive. Auto updating tests based on changes to the functionality. I think anyone who hasn't been doing that yet, hopefully that was a bit of an insight there in the middle of the video. And thanks for the great answers to the questions. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Yeah, thank you all. So
Thank you.
We want to say A is not a destination, it's a journey, and we are there with you in this journey. Thank you.
Yes. Really happy to help you go faster and further. Just get in touch. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.